We want to get reaction as well from Capitol Hill to some of these conversations and others, and turn now to Democratic Congressman Brad Sherman of California, who is joining me live from the Hill here on Bloomberg TV and radio. Congressman, welcome back to Balance of Power. There's much I'd like to discuss with you, but would love for you to take a swing, as you do sit on the Financial Services Committee, about Jay Clayton being a different kind of cop for the financial world, potentially, in the second administration.
I think Clayton is one of the more reasonable picks for Donald Trump. I realize that isn't a real high standard, but I think he's an entirely reasonable pick to be the chief prosecutor in the nation's financial capital.
And what about the other picks that I feel like you are alluding to, sir?
Oh, my God, Matt Gaetz, Attorney General. Wow. It is just stunningly bizarre, especially... You'd think that Donald Trump, who says we should have openness with the American people, isn't demanding that the Ethics Committee investigation, which was supposed to report today and might still report today, that report isn't made public. How can we spend all this government money, have a Congress, which is a House of Representatives, which is in Republican hands, do a bipartisan, fair investigation, and then hide it from the American people? I think that's outrageous.
Well, I guess we'll see if that either leaks out or is formally issued, and we'll see whether or not Matt Gaetz ultimately is confirmed for that job, Congressman. I'd also like to ask you about a man with a job currently, and that is the Fed chair, Jay Powell, who has had to field questions about whether he would resign if asked by Donald Trump. He has stated it's not legal for Trump to demote him or anyone else in Fed leadership, but I wonder if you think those theories will be tested in this incoming administration.
I wouldn't put it past Trump to try to do things that he doesn't have the legal right to do. I'm counting on the court system to defend our laws, and I think Jay Powell will serve out his term.
Well, and he certainly has more work ahead of him just in the next couple of weeks, Congressman. There will be a rate decision. The market seems less convinced that they're actually going to cut rates again before the year is out, but do you believe the economy needs it?
Well, you've got to look at what the economy is going to be next year. Trump is proposing policies which, according to the Peterson Institute, are going to boost inflation between 4 and 7 percentage points. That's worse than COVID's effect on the inflation rate. And we would rely upon the Fed to somehow do its best to control inflation. Of course, higher interest rates are bad for consumers, just as inflation is bad for consumers.
Well, so I guess we'll see how the Fed navigates that next year. But before this year is over, Congressman, the government also needs to be funded. There's a deadline coming up for that as well in December. And I wonder if you think it's more likely we end up with a continuing resolution or an omnibus package.
Congress will tend to kick a can down the road. An omnibus is much more difficult to put together. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a continuing resolution until at least February. Republicans are talking about a continuing resolution all the way through the end of the fiscal year in September. And given how much I disagree with the things they would try to do in an appropriations bill, putting the government on automatic pilot is, it's not good, but it's not as bad as other things.
Well, try is an operative word there, sir. The votes will still be required, and it does seem that in the incoming Congress, it is going to be, once again, as we've experienced for the last 2 years, a very tight majority, especially with Donald Trump having pulled not just Gaetz, but 2 others out of the Republican conference for roles in the administration. Is there a way Democrats can use that to their advantage?
Well, in the Senate, they're going to keep the filibuster, and in the Senate, they have only a 3-vote margin. So, for example, if only 4 Republican senators will stand up and say, we can't vote on Matt Gaetz until we see the Ethics Committee report, then there'll be an important step for honesty with the American people, openness, and on that nomination. I would suspect that they will not allow, for example, Stefanik to take her role as UN ambassador until such time as they've had special elections to fill other seats. They can't operate with no, with a one-seat majority And we'll see how the elections come out. I think the ones in California that are still uncalled are going to go our way.
Well, I'm glad you raised Elise Stefanik, sir. She, of course, as you alluded to, tapped as ambassador for the United Nations. We also saw former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee tapped as ambassador to Israel. And I wonder what that says to you about the way in which Israel policy could look different as we move forward into this next administration.
I think Stefanik will do a good job, probably in the mold of Nikki Haley. I think Huckabee has gone way too far and will lead Israel in the wrong direction. Israel may be able to take extreme positions and still remain popular in the Republican Party of the United States, but there are 8 billion people on this planet, and if Israel only has the support of Israelis, or a majority of Israelis, and a majority of Republicans, then Israel is isolated from the rest of the world. The fact is that Israel's 76 years old. During its first half of existence, Democrats and Republicans were in control about half the time, and that'll be true the next 76 years. And if Israel puts itself in a position where it has no appeal to those to the left of Donald Trump, that's a terrible position for Israel to be in.
Congressman, we just have a minute or two left here. The Washington Post reported this week that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is preparing a ceasefire in Lebanon as a quote-unquote gift to the incoming president, Donald Trump. Do you think that is actually achievable before he takes office?
I think if Hezbollah will follow the UN resolution, usually UN resolutions aren't particularly good for Israel, but will follow the UN resolution and move north of the Litani River, as they agreed to do decades ago, or over a decade ago, that we should get a ceasefire. And I don't think we should continue killing people unnecessarily on either side just to make a gift to an incoming U.S. administration. Israel should conclude a ceasefire when it can do so in a way that will keep its northern Israelis safe. And that is pretty much a decision Hezbollah has to make. Are they willing to do what they agreed to do over a decade ago and move north of the Litani River?
All right, Congressman, appreciate your time on this Friday. Sir, enjoy the weekend. That is Democratic Congressman Brad Sherman of California, member of the House Foreign Affairs and Financial Services Committee, here with us on Bloomberg TV and radio.